Hi everybody, you all out there. It's so great to have Michael Mulcahy sitting opposite me on the screen and talking to us today. And you've got a suit on, Mick. Wow, is that especially for us?
The best for you, Sarah, just the best.
We didn't rehearse this beforehand, actually, we didn't. No. So you are in your studio at Northwestern, and what do you see out of the window?
I'm looking out onto Lake Michigan. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. There's not a cloud in the sky. I see blue, blue, blue.
And you've got someone special behind the camera, don't you?
I do. I have my dear colleague Gail, who teaches in the studio next to me in the Horn studio. Here's Gail Williams.
Hi, everybody.
This is so great. This is deja vu because, of course, we.
No, this is my soup.
It's a bit late for lunch, isn't it, in Chicago?
Yeah, unfortunately, yes.
We're always late. Late to rehearsal, late to interview.
For the people that didn't see Gail's interview, this is a deja vu because the beginning of Gail's interview, we had Mick on live in her studio. So you even brought your laptop in today, didn't you? Yeah. Just in case his didn't work.
Yeah.
We have a cameo deal where we always appear in each other's productions.
Someone will have to start paying you for that soon.
Oh, there's plenty of dough here.
Well, I want to say thank you to Sarah for providing everyone this opportunity to speak with people. I think this is just fantastic, and it's a wonderful education for everyone.
I agree.
And on that, I have to go teach. Talk to you later.
Okay, thank you. That's really sweet of you. But remember, it's also
wise, Gail.
Yeah. Tim in Melbourne, who's up at 6 o'clock this morning to get ready to do all this. So speaking of Melbourne, how did an Aussie like you get all the way over there to Windy City? You don't have to tell us the whole thing, but was this where you dreamed of ending up?
Well, I have to be honest with you and tell you my first dream was to go to London. I was a young boy when I decided, against all logic, to try to be an orchestra musician. My hero was a Welsh trombonist by the name of Derek James, who at that time played in the London Philharmonic. He was to go to the Royal Philharmonic at the end of his career. But I fell in love with his sound, and I had a fantasy. It really was a fantasy about going to London. I had no idea how that would work. As my career developed, if I can be so pretentious as to describe it as a career, it was really more of a calling, a love of music. I was in Australian orchestras in Tasmania and Melbourne, and decided fairly early in my 20s that I wanted to see the rest of the world, and so those travels took me to Germany. I was in what was West Germany at that point, at the time when there were quite a lot of jobs for trombone players, and at a time where there were international competitions.
Was there the rule then, if I may, was there the rule that you had to play on a German trombone, a Deutsche Posaune?
That was varied. Some orchestras, yes, the Berlin Philharmonic, for sure. Most of the places didn't insist upon that. The funny thing was, I ended up in WDR, in the West German radio in Cologne. I was there for 7 years. And I was the most enthusiastic person about playing the German trombone. My colleagues weren't that into it. And we do it in the Chicago Symphony frequently. In fact, we're doing it tonight in the Dvorak Golden Spinning Wheel. We do a lot of German trombone here. We have Glausels and Kruspers and Lechers and Kuhns and Tyne and you name it.
Did Daniel Barenboim start you off on that, or were you doing it before he became chief conductor?
We were doing it informally, and he loved the idea. And the orchestra actually bought a set of Glausels, which were copies of Lechers and Kruspers for the orchestra. But between us, we'd have, for sure, 25 German trombones among us. Yeah, we have a lot of instruments. So I was in Germany for 7 years, and then I went back to Australia because I had children and decided that was the place to bring them up. And I was teaching at the Canberra School of Music, and the Chicago Symphony came to Australia for Australia's bicentennial. And I knew the guys. I knew Charlie from when he was in the Philadelphia Orchestra, and we got together in Sydney to play quartets. And so the short story is basically we played quartets at the Sydney Opera House just for fun, and they said, Frank is retiring and you should audition. And so I did. I auditioned. I came over to Chicago the next year in January, and I auditioned live, and it happened to be my birthday, which was to my great advantage because they offered me the job, which was very generous of them.
It was a nice birthday present. Did you have to audition behind a screen?
Yes, it was behind a screen until the finals. And in the finals, there were two finalists. The other finalist was John DeLutis, who'd been at Curtis, a beautiful trombone player who subsequently went to the San Francisco Symphony. He passed away very, very prematurely from an undiagnosed heart disorder, I think in his 20s. But we were on stage for the finals, going back-to-back playing excerpts by ourselves, and then back-to-back excerpts with the section. We were on stage the whole time. And I think we were both having, we were having fun at that point, because we were, we were playing with the section and we were enjoying each other's playing, I believe. And Schulte asked some pretty crazy stuff, bass trombone excerpts, bolero, Renish in one breath, you name it. He came up with some spicy stuff. But I had the fortune, it wasn't John's birthday, it was mine, so they...
But you came from being principal trombone everywhere to being second trombone.
That's true. That's true.
That was a whole. I mean, that's a whole new learning process somehow. Being the supporter in the section. Yeah,
there are two elements to this. Firstly, in the 23 years I've been in the orchestra, I've played quite a lot in every chair. And at the moment we have a vacancy, so I'm doing a lot of first trombone and a little bit of bass trombone. I love variety, so that suits me a lot. But the more important point is that having been first trombone in 3 orchestras previously, I did not really appreciate what the second was doing. I was always grateful that they were great players, but I didn't really understand the substance of their job. And sitting in the chair, I realized that I could hear everything much better sitting in the middle than on the end. And when you're sitting in the middle...
Agree. That's my job, I agree.
You can hear everything. And so to the extent that things are not unanimous, sitting on the second chair affects you much more than it affects you sitting on the first chair. And so sitting in the middle, you're a bit of a unifier. You're the conduit to the people around you, and you can give, I think, good feedback to both ends of the section. And I think the most important thing, people talk about having a rich, dense sound to support the first, and being able to blend with the low end and being brilliant at the high and all those kinds of things. But the main thing is just to bring everyone onto the same page, I would say.
The second always has to have a higher radar than everyone else, I find.
Yes.
The second has to be so in tune with everyone. The first has to do his job, take care of the solos, obviously has to react. It's in a horn section anyway. I mean, I'm sure it's no different in a trombone section, but I find that the highest radars, they go to the second horn players usually.
Well, my radar had to grow when I started in this job, that's for sure. Yeah. No question about it. Mm-hmm.
And what would you say, there's a job free in your orchestra?
Yeah, we had an assistant job. That person retired, and there's going to be a vacancy filled in the next couple of years, and so we're looking forward to getting new blood in the section. And
so you wouldn't do that job? She asks live on the internet. Would that be something would you like to go back to playing only first, or are you happy where you are?
There's some discussion about what the new job's going to be. So I'm very happy with my job at the moment because I do have a lot of variety. And depending on what the new job is, it may not be more attractive than what I have, or it may be, I don't know. That's still being figured out.
We wanted to hear it here first. Tell me, would you have, I guess if you play second, you have a little bit more time on your hands to do all your other things, like conducting?
Yes, once again, I like variety, so I like to express myself in different ways, and I find that orchestra playing is a very important part of my musical life, but it's only a part of it. And if I was to be isolated or even marooned in any one area, I think I'd be unhappy. I need to play chamber music, I need to play recitals, occasional concertos, and I like to conduct. I end up conducting more new music than anything else because that's where the biggest need is. So I find myself conducting things that are usually more complicated. I would love to conduct a G minor Mozart or something profound that wasn't just complicated. But
you don't just find yourself conducting, you studied it properly, didn't you? Or was it just something you studied by the great conductors you had in front of you at Chicago Symphony?
I would say most of what I've learned has been by observation. When I look at the people who I thought were just beautiful conductors, when I think of beautiful techniques, Haitink has a beautiful technique. Abado has a beautiful technique. I like people who say a lot with economy. So I'm not so big into the big shows of emotion and the big body gestures. I find that the conductors that are most powerful for me are usually understated but very intense. And their intention is very clear by their body language, the clarity that they provide. I'm not into people that just beat great. A conductor has to have a very convincing vision of a piece to convince a very experienced, at times jaded orchestra profession that they should adjust their thinking to a new vision. And the great conductors do that. The great conductors stand on the podium. They definitely have a conviction about what the composer intended, and the best conductors give themselves over to the composer and represent the composer. And those that do it with humility and insight have a lot of credibility, and the musicians will go with them a long distance to accomplish something. Those other people who just put their personality, their own individual personality on the music, tend to impose the same traits on every composer. So you're getting a little bit more of the conductor's personality than you are the composer's content.
Hear, hear. Oh, God. And we've had people are writing in. Darren, who's principal trombone in Helsinki, he's just said, well said, well said. And you can hear
I know Darren.
Oh, Darren,
Greetings
we just...
to Finland.
Yeah, greetings to Finland.
Here, Darren. Yeah.
We had a great party with the Finnish musicians, mainly the horn players, but Darren was allowed to crash because he's nice. So, well said. That. How does your orchestra react when there's someone up there waving around who they're just not interested in? I know how my orchestra reacts, but I'm sure yours is probably very similar. The music stands go up, and you just do.
You and I are fortunate in that we each play many concerts, so the orchestra is very trained to deliver performances, sometimes not under ideal conditions. The better the conductor is, the more notice will be taken. The orchestra has its own automatic pilot, as does your orchestra, and we have what I refer to as our house version of things when it's necessary, just to get the job done as best we can in the circumstances.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
The great conductors, I'm very happy to do something a different way when a conductor does something with real belief, with real conviction. And I had one of your old bosses, Daniel Barenboim. Oh, I've lost their picture there somehow. Daniel Barenboim was a very active discusser of all situations, and we had many in-depth, friendly arguments about how music goes and why it goes, and so on and so forth. I hope I still have you, Sarah. There's Tim.
Yeah, I think Sarah's feed's just dropped off, but I'm sure.
Okay. I hope it's nothing I did.
No, probably nothing you said either. I'm sure. She's fine.
I did not disinvite Sarah. I did not vote her off the island.
You didn't. I'll just re-invite her back in.
That was scary because I'm technically so novice.
Yeah. We'll see. She'll come back soon.
Now, is everyone else listening to me?
Yes, everyone else is still out there. We've got about 100 or so.
While Sarah is getting back on, I'll mention this CD produced in Australia.
I'll do.
It is the 20th century hit for trombone called Full Circle, featuring music of Richard Mills, Carl Vine, Martin Wesley. I'm just showing them in your absence.
Sorry about that. A bit of advertising, that's good.
Yeah. This is Full Circle. This is the coolest music written for trombone, all Australian music. So check it out, Full Circle.
And where can they get it? Where can they buy it? Can someone put up a link on the chat, please, of where we can buy it?
Yes. someone can go to ericclay.com. That's Klay, ericclay.com. If you're in America, you can buy it from Hickey's. It's around. It's also downloadable on iTunes.
Someone's just written, Adam from Texas has written, own it, I love it. So obviously it's made the rounds.
And I love Adam.
I would like to have that for Christmas, please, someone out there. So that's what I wish for Christmas.
Okay, I need your address.
Yeah, no problem. I'm so sorry about that little fallout here. We're at the Digital Concert Hall office. It actually shouldn't happen, the Berlin Film Media, but I don't know, anything that can happen online.
It's a miracle it wasn't me.
It was actually.
It was
but
me?
You're doing, no, it wasn't you. You're doing really well. I must have been Gail helping you.
Okay.
Tell me who is that Haitink on the wall behind you? Who's that? Up here, there.
Yeah.
That's Haitink. Who else have you got up there?
Pierre. There's
Well,
Haitink there somewhere. There's Pierre there. Can you see Pierre?
Yeah. And there's up there. What's up there? There's an Australian brass that's on the.
There's Barenboim. There's Barenboim with our low brass group. We did some chamber music, some low brass chamber music concerts with Barenboim. He conducted Debussy pieces for trombones. I mean solo pieces and Scriabin. We did a lot of. He played harpsichord in some early music and conducted Janicek Capriccio. Yeah, I've done a lot of chamber music with Boulez and.
Perfect. I want to see your tie. That's why. If you wore a tie, I want to see it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that's great. Your conductors have really been into doing brass. I mean, the CSO brass. Come on, they are legendary. I'm not trying to flatter. It really. That's just the way it is.
Well, they were great for 50 years before I came to town. We are very dependent on the pedagogy of our predecessors. Can you hear me, Sarah?
I can hear you very well.
Okay. It was so silent, I thought something was wrong. No, most of us studied. Most of us studied with Arnold Jacobs, Ed Kleinhammer. I certainly did. I had lessons with all those old legends. Bud Herseth was still in the orchestra for some 12 years after I joined. And I did some translating for Jacobs for German students that came over to study, which is very difficult because he speaks in a very anatomical way when he teaches. Jake was a very wordy teacher.
So he would go on for ages and you would just be expected to translate?
Yes, and it was like translating for a doctor.
Oh God! When you say anatomical, what, he knew all the names for all the various parts we use when we breathe. He knew all the stuff, everything that an internist knows. He knew, and he would refer to certain things. He was a beautiful teacher. He was a beautiful user of the language, but it was flowery, and that was quite difficult for me to translate. I bet. But he was a huge influence on all of you. I mean,
absolutely.
Did you like that before you got to Chicago, or was it something you sort of changed?
I had worked with many people who'd studied with him before I came to Chicago, so I was dealing with those concepts, but they were refined when I came to town. I made visits to Chicago for 2 years before I took the audition, and funnily enough, I was playing in Berlin a lot with the former Berlin Radio Symphony, now the Deutsches Symphony Orchestra. Yeah. When Shai was the music director there, I played with them a lot while I was still living in Australia. And so I would go to Berlin for some concerts or go on tour with them, and I would always come via Chicago, take some lessons, and then go on to Berlin. So I used to, for a few years there, I was staying with Stefan Jezierski. And so, we got to...
Parties,
yeah, good times. Very good times, yeah.
They are still good times at Stefan's house. We still have parties here.
But I should just, share with our listeners that maybe the most important thing that I've concluded from the whole Chicago School of Teaching is that you have to find the healthiest, way to play the instrument. You have to find an unforceful way that uses a combination of structure where the embouchure is consistently set in a diamond shape. I'll just do this for a second. You can see my corners are engaged and my chin is flat. You want to keep the chin still, especially while you're articulating and when you're changing notes. And you want the tension or the engagement of the embouchure primarily on the sides, not in the middle. You want to minimize the amount of pressure and stress and tightness there is on the middle of the embouchure where you want it to vibrate around the aperture, but to hold this simple structure in place in a permanent way for every phrase. So you engage the embouchure at the beginning of the phrase and you don't relax it until you take a breath. The other thing,
smile, and the horns. We try and do everything to not smile. Everything is sort of
not smile. No, no smile. No, people say a pucker. You know, you have to control the width of your embouchure. So at that point where you can make a diamond shape without stretching the lips thin, as you go into the high register or the low register, give me a mouthpiece, Teddy. It's important that you don't stretch the embouchure wide when you play high. You'll see kids if they're going for a 100, when the lips get too thin, they can't vibrate. They get very brittle. So you have to control the width there. And it should all be nice and still and economical. But the other part of the story, which is equally important, is that this structure has to be fueled, has to be fed, has to be nourished. And that in the same way that you engage the embouchure at the beginning of the phrase in a singular motion, you also set a singular wave of air in motion, so that a phrase consists of one wave of air, not several spurts, not individual spurts of air for each individual note, but you blow in a nice single wave. So I like to think of our approach to brass playing being this single wave of air support per phrase, a single engagement of embouchure. It doesn't relax, it adjusts. It may adjust in tension as you change notes or change registers. So you have the line of air, you have the line of embouchure, and then the third thing, which is equally important, is that you establish a cohesive and uninterrupted musical line. So if you just think about that, everyone, parallel lines of air support, embouchure engagement, and musical line. And your job is to find the most efficient way of combining those three parallelisms in order to project a beautiful, unforced sound, to make the most beautiful sound on every note, one note at a time, as easily as possible.
How can they do that? Because everyone's listening to you saying that, and it sounds, I mean, it's just like that is how it should be. Brass playing should be such a natural part of what we do. It should be breathing in, blowing out, making a beautiful sound. So many people have, you know, they breathe in strange, and then they get all tense, and then they go ta. And how can we get that? How can we get to there? How do you recommend kids to practice something like that?
If you listen to a great player play, you will hear beautiful, clear, pure sound that sounds effortless. And the reason it sounds effortless is because they've found that sweet spot between structure and energy. So when you're doing it right, it's quite close to doing nothing. So if you can imagine, Teddy, give me my trombone for a second. If you can imagine that I was going to... Teddy, say hello. Here's Teddy.
Hi.
No, come down here so they can see you.
Hi. Hi. Thanks for helping us out today.
Yeah. You have to be beautiful to get into my studio.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if we're getting precise about making a beautiful sound. So if here I am doing nothing, here I am playing a note. Nothing. 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 Nothing.
looks so easy. It looks so easy.
You know, the air really accomplishes the work. If there's work in brass playing, it is air movement. But the air is not under so much pressure that when you stop, there's a pop. Some people, if they're playing high, if they're playing something like this, you hear that kind of... Sorry. If you hear that, people are creating resistance. They're creating internal pressure. You're not trying to do that. You're simply trying to elevate air at the speed that's appropriate to the pitch. So if someone says a note, Teddy, say a note. E flat. E flat. So a normal E flat I know is about this much airspeed. If I play a high one, I know I have to blow faster. And before you play it, you have to know the pitch and you have to know that speed through experience.
You sort of have to...
And you know when you're playing in the high register, it's like putting the bow on the right string. Obviously, when you're playing high, your lips are skinnier than when you play low. If I play a low note...
That's my favorite register.
The lips are very thick and the aperture is very big. If I'm playing a higher note, the lips are skinny and the hole is small, but there's not tremendous pressure there. When you're playing high, you're blowing through a smaller tube. If you can think about these as pipes, maybe. When you're playing very low, the organ pipe is huge. Right? So the volume of air is huge. When you're playing high, the organ pipe is very small, like a piccolo. So the air volume is not huge, it's tiny, but you're just moving it through the pipe rather swiftly. But always eschewing force, disavowal of all force. And everyone, even the most basic beginner, can start off by just playing one note and seeing if it's clear, see if it's pure, and see if it's unforced. It should be beautiful and easy. And you can apply that test to everything you play, and everything you try to play will improve if you can figure out how to make it sound more beautiful, more pure, and more easy. But it takes time. You have to be patient.
Yeah, it's Song and Wind, like the name of Arnold Jacobs' book. It's Song and Wind. It's actually very close to singing, I find. If it's working well, it's like it's like a human voice, brass playing. It
is very close to that, and I'll say something else. This is a little bit esoteric, maybe, but give me my mouthpiece again, Teddy. When I'm moving air, it's a relatively gentle thing. You don't want to get forceful about this. You're not trying to blow someone over. You're just trying to set the air in motion. If you tap the mouthpiece on your instrument, the instrument will resonate very easily and very clearly, so you can see how well the instrument amplifies sound. But the actual motion of air is actually relatively gentle. It's not forceful. Like for a middle B flat, la, la, I can say that my physiology here, except for making my brass players diamond, my physiology is as relaxed in whistling as it is in buzzing. So this should all be relaxed. Sometimes people activate too many muscles, that their neck muscles and their chest and everything are tight, and you hear this. No, it's nothing like constipation. If anything that you're doing is reminiscent of something that happens in the bathroom, you're doing it wrong. Okay? It should be more like floating on the Dead Sea. You're just floating on the top of the water. You don't have to do anything. The air is keeping you afloat.
But exactly, the air is keeping you afloat. And the Chicago boys are really renowned for, I told this story before, on when I came to play with you guys, you weren't on that week. It was, oh, maybe, no, you weren't. It was Mahler 2, or it was some huge piece. And I was sitting right in front of the trombones. And they took a breath, and literally my hair did that. I felt like I was being sucked into their bells. It was the most unbelievable. And that is something that I found in all the places I played that's actually quite unique to you guys, or at least you started it.
Yes, but you know, to be honest with you, if you were to sit in front of Stefan in your orchestra, you would get your hair would move there too.
So
And
if I sit behind Stefan, this is what I look like. Yeah, that's true. But no, but horn players we don't exhale on such a huge, as big an aperture somehow. I don't know. If I was doing this, it would disturb the position of the mouthpiece for me. But you guys took it a lot quicker somehow.
I think there's a bit of confusion about this. The primary points for breathing in on the trombone, like the horn, are the corners. So when you see this kind of breath, that's not as good as this kind of breath.
Yeah, yeah.
I recommend that people have contact with the mouthpiece as they breathe, that they enlarge their corners or expose their corners a little bit. I actually tell my students to think of Julia Roberts, who's an actress who has a very big mouth, and her teeth begin over here somewhere. And so think of a channel going in here and a channel going in there. The tongue is in the bottom of the mouth. I get my students to say "oh," a British "oh," because when we say "oh," the tongue is very low and the oral cavity is very big. It should be a very posh "oh," and you stretch the corners. The difference between the horn and the trombone is that the trombone mouthpiece covers up more than twice your face. Mm-hmm. So we don't have quite as much room around the mouthpiece as you do. But you can't breathe through the mouthpiece because the hole is too small. You get a little bit through there, you get a little bit through your nose, but the primary points are in through the corners. And the embouchure should be more or less set during the breath, and at the end of the breath, when you go to start the note, the embouchure must already be engaged. So when you start the note, there's no movement, it's stable, and it's ready to go.
That's when splits happen. It's when it's not set up. The whole physical effort, when something's a little bit off, that's when the splits happen, sadly.
Yep, the structure has to be in place when you articulate and shouldn't move.
Now, there are a whole lot of, now the questions are really flowing in from all our friends. How do you practice achieving that state of relaxation? Can you practice that? Because
your body, I believe, and not everyone agrees with this, your body should generally be in a state of release as you're playing, not in a state of tightness. So the sensation that you get when you exhale is a very pleasant, relaxing sensation. You should sustain that sensation even when you breathe in. And as you make sound, your body should still be in release. The parts of the body that are active during brass playing are limited to the embouchure and your air exchange. The air exchange should be very effortless and very economical. You don't want to add work or labor to breathing. You don't want to add work or labor to making sound. You're always looking at minimalism. So it is a lot like doing nothing. You know, if you lay on your back on the floor in your bedroom and you just do very slow breathing, feel how your body is in a state of release when it's not standing up. Feel how easy it is to move air when you're laying down. And you should copy that when you stand up. You should still be in a state of release because it's about efficient exchange of air. It's not about effortful exchange of air. Don't try. I have a saying, don't be a Tommy try hard, or as the case may be, a Tammy try hard. You know, it is a fairly natural thing to do, and if you isolate these few functions, you can learn to make a beautiful pure sound without force, and everyone, even beginners, can copy their teachers and just play single notes and ask themselves, does the note start with a quick, clean attack? Do you get the full sound at the articulation? And is the sound pure? Is it unforced? Is it devoid of all distortion or airiness or woofiness or graininess or any of the other properties? You know, think of it like drinking water. When you drink, the most important thing about that water is that it's pure. So you should think about your sound like you think about the water you drink.
But I find if, as a girl, and there's so many more girl brass players out there than there were before. I mean, Gail is a total phenomenal. I mean, she's so tiny and can play longer and louder than most people I know. I do have to work, and I'm not always in that state of relaxation, because if I'm sitting next to Stefan Dor, I have to play just as loud, well, impossible, but as loud and as long as he does. And my body has to work twice as hard in a way, almost, because when I exhale, I find I have to force it. Not force is a totally wrong word, but it is quite hard work sometimes.
Well,
that's why
I'll
I'm
say
asking
this.
you to find out about this relaxation thing.
Well, it is not like you're doing nothing. You are doing something. You're moving air, and if you're playing with Stefan Dor, then you are using a big scale of sound, a big range of dynamics. The difference between Stefan and you is really simply that your lungs may not be, you've got better hair, okay, that's true, but you may breathe more frequently. But both of you will be breathing with vigor, and both of you will be blowing with vigor, but not with force.
Not with force, no, okay, that's why.
Because when you go from vigor to force, when the air's under too much pressure, the sound gets coarse.
Yeah.
You're no longer playing in a controlled or refined way. And even when you're playing very loud, you have to control the sound. So there is a point at which the air gets too hot and the sound gets rough. And
okay.
You don't do that.
Yeah, no, we don't. We do not like rough sound. Charles has been asking a couple of times, how do you use the buzzing mouthpiece, buzzing the mouthpiece as a practice tool? And what about free buzzing and burps? And I don't think he means burps. I think he means burps.
I use free buzzing relatively little. I just have not had the time or the inclination to develop much of it. I just do a little bit to show structure, just to reveal that. You can play on mouthpiece rims to reveal stuff. I think the burp is fine. The resistance is slightly different. I basically do more just relaxed mouthpiece buzzing. And when I say relaxed mouthpiece buzzing, a lot of people try to make the same amount of sound on the mouthpiece as they do on the instrument, and that's a mistake. The trombone, all brass instruments, are very efficient amplifiers, and the mouthpiece is just a little pipe, so it doesn't amplify sound at all. So generally I recommend that people buzz a moderate dynamic, maybe mezzo piano to mezzo forte, but don't try and make a lot of sound. And in fact, if you're playing a moderate dynamic, you'll be practicing the structure of your embouchure more certainly than when you're playing really loud. Because when you're playing really loud, you're flooding the mouthpiece with air. And it's possible to make a certain amount of noise without any structure. But if you're playing soft, you rely on your structure more, but if you're playing very loud, I'll point away from the screen so it's not objectionable.
No, I was just about to actually stand up because we're having the national anthem, so I was.
God bless her. God bless her and hers. So yeah, don't force on the mouthpiece. Actually, I think Joe Alessi influenced me a little bit there in not forcing the volume on the mouthpiece, because a lot of people want to play with the big sound, so they go. You know, if you put that on a trombone, you could play in a football stadium.
Yeah. What about burps?
I used to mess with that many years ago. It's not part of my regular teaching. I don't have a strong feeling about it.
Oh, okay, good. That was a question. We are told, Richard in Melbourne, this is a real trombone question, we are told not to use the middle finger to contact the bell in third or fourth position. How come many great players, in fact, do this?
Yes, and I'm guilty of that myself, and I tell myself frequently not to do it, and it turns out that supposed great players are actually human beings, and they have failings too.
Is it a failing? I can't comment. I'm a horn player. We only have 4 fingers, but
you start doing it as a kid for security, and it's an unnecessary habit that looks bad.
Okay, good. Was there a different kind of use of vibrato in German-style trombone playing? Asks David. And
Germans
something what you also know about Shargel trombones. What do you think about Shargel trombones?
I haven't had the pleasure of trying one yet. I know that the Wiener Posaunen Quartet use those instruments, and I'm very familiar playing with the trumpets. Our trumpets have some Shargel, they have Monker and Shargel and whatever have you. And so I've heard those things, and I'm excited to try them. We already own a lot of Germanic instruments, but I'm not set in stone. If there's an instrument out there that makes me sound better than I sound today, I'm happy to get it.
Here. I'm still looking for that one. I just got I promised Jesper Sorensen just wrote me a text. We got a Jesper, are you watching? It's fantastic. It's fantastic, says Jesper. He's sick at home, so you have to wait till Jesper.
Gute Besserung. Gute Besserung.
He wants to know about the ice cream imagination. What's the ice cream imagination?
Well, I think Jesper might be thinking back to a session that we had. I hope this is correct, Jesper, because I give a lot of lessons, and so my analogies do emigrate from time to time. But I'm imagining that we were talking about sound and knowing the flavor of your sound before you play it. If you want something, you have to imagine it. If you want something, you have to will it, but you have to know it before you can do it. So if you they've mapped the brain and discovered, for example, that if you taste chocolate ice cream, let's use that as an example, that the brain lights up in a certain way. They've also found that if you imagine the taste of that chocolate ice cream, the brain lights up in the same way. So it's a very real function. So to go a little bit further along that path trombonistically, if you are able to conceive the sound in your mind, then you know that sound. And if you know that sound, you can hear that sound. And if you hear that sound, you can play that sound. So you're actually conceiving something specific in your mind, a specific outcome. It might be chocolate ice cream, it might be vanilla ice cream, it might be a velvety trombone sound, it might be a brilliant trombone sound, whatever's appropriate to you at that moment. But your sound is very dependent on you activating the creative part of your mind to conceive something specific that determines precisely how you want to sound. And so over the years in my teaching, particularly here at Northwestern, we've tried to distill all trombone knowledge to the most simple form. And I have had my students write essays on this, and I've told them I want you to be very precise and succinct. You know, the shortest essay wins pretty much. And we got it down to 3 words. Those 3 words were know, K-N-O-W, hear, H-E-A-R, and play. So before you want to play something, you have to know it. You have to know what it is that you want. And in order to be able to play what you know, you need to hear it. So you need to be able to hear what you know. And if you listen to what you hear, you can play what you hear. So always, another thing that I say in my teaching very frequently is sempre semplice, sempre semplice, always simple. We are always looking for the simplest, the most clear truth. And in your practice, your job is not to hit notes. Your job is to have clarity about exactly how you want to sound and to find the shortest and most healthy, economical way to realize that. So always looking at reducing all this knowledge. You know, we own so many books, we've had so many lessons, but there should be some basic essential truths that dominate the way that you habituate yourself on the instrument. And you are your history. When you get up on stage, no matter how nicely dressed you are only a sum of the quality of your practice. So what you're doing in the room in the basement when no one cares or knows what you're doing, that's your sacred time. That's when you go into the cathedral of your practice and you act in a very pure way and you project the discipline and you conceive the beauty and you exercise the discipline that you want on stage. Whatever you have on the practice room, that's what you're going to have on stage, probably minus 5 or 10% because you're uptight, a little bit nervous maybe. So don't be careless in your practice. If you do your work in the practice room, you can enjoy the stage. you're going to work in one of those places. And if you work in public without having practice, it's very painful. But if you work in private where you're relaxed and you have patience, then you can enjoy the stage.
What makes you such a good teacher? Really, I know you're the most modest person out there, but it's incredible listening to you talk. I want to come to Chicago and sign up for your trombone class immediately. What makes a good teacher? Did you go through a terrible time that made you really realize what this was all about? Did you always just get it? Some teachers are great players but don't teach so well. Some teachers are great teachers but don't play so well. What is it about you that makes you be able? You seem to be able to communicate with these brass players on such a high level. It's incredible.
I think it's for others to judge my efficacy as a teacher. I will tell you this: I'm a very observant person. If I play with someone, I notice everything, and I appreciate what another person's doing, even what my students are doing. And if I see something good that my students are doing, I will benefit from that. And I notice, just generally in life, I'm almost annoying at what I notice. I notice if someone in the orchestra has a haircut, or someone changes something in their grooming or something like that, or if one of the girls has a particularly fetching manicure or whatever it is, I notice it and I appreciate it. Thank you. And so, yeah, I'm a very observant person, and sometimes it's annoying because you don't only observe good things, sometimes you observe bad things. But I feel that, if you are alert and you observe that life is richer, there's a lot going on. When I'm not playing in the orchestra, I'm listening to some of my great colleagues. We have so many new, wonderful, Eugene Isotov and Mathieu Dufour and David McGill and our new clarinetist.
It's Eugene's birthday today.
Happy birthday, Eugene. That is awesome. One of the most, one of my awesome colleagues. And so I just bask in their music making. And I actually imagine, I listen to their phrasing, and I know this piece as well, but I imagine sometimes when I'm listening to, say, the violins play a melody, I'm wondering what that looks like on paper. I'm imagining how that's notated, or how specifically what the articulation is, or the dynamics, or what the expressive markings are. So I'm never passive. Even when I'm not making sound, I'm enjoying the process that's going on around me. And I think if you are curious, which I am, and if you're observant, I think that you can profit a lot by being in the realm of others. And I do enjoy trying to express myself. And if I have any qualities as a teacher, doing a lot of it has made me better. Just like practicing, just like playing the trombone. I've been at Northwestern for 11 years. I was at the Australian National University at the Canberra School of Music for 3 years before that. And I taught as an adjunct in years before that. And so just having done a lot of it, you have to get better or stop.
Well, listen, we don't have too much time left, but there's loads of people out there. Can I just fire some quick questions at you, just so that I feel like we've looked after?
You can fire away as much as you like.
There's one of our most loyal viewers, Kendall Gray, who's just asked, how, if at all, would you say your playing has changed over time since joining the CSO, and what influences changes? Did Bud, for example, influence any of those? Did Jake influence any? Did Charlie and Gene?
Yeah. Well, let me tell you, as a brass player, being in an orchestra like Chicago and being surrounded by healthy people has made me more healthy. I'm a much more efficient player than I was when I was 20, but I don't have the time to practice the hours. I practiced enormous hours when I was 18, 19, 20. I don't even want to admit in public how many hours I used to practice, but enormous.
Oh,
but
admit in public. We want to know. What? 9?
8.
8?
Yeah.
Right,
so
8 hours a day. You play the trombone for 8 hours a day.
I did, past tense. I'm a much more healthy player now. I'm a much more efficient player now. And I think that is one thing. Playing in the CSO specifically, a vibrancy of sound is very important. And no one has a more vibrant sound than Bud Herser had. he played with a very live sound. Even when he buzzed the mouthpiece, it was very vibrant. Always playing with a very clear attack. Sometimes people think they're going to get a mellow sound or a pretty sound if they somehow don't attack, or if they hide the attack, or they slow down the attack. I think any complication to starting the note is bad. Even when you play soft, you should play with a swift attack, a short stroke, a clean response, and embrace clarity at the beginning of notes, even when you play very soft. Speaking of soft, that's something I had to expand a lot, because the low brass in our orchestra, when it's soft, plays super soft. And I had to learn to play softer than I have had to play anywhere else. And I loved doing it, but at the beginning it was tough. And they play, Jay is a beautiful soft player, and Charlie's a beautiful soft player, and Gina's a beautiful soft player. So you need to have a lot of comfort playing soft. So that's another way that my playing grew. And I would say that in this orchestra, more than the other orchestras I was in, there was an unself-conscious embracing of a singing style. So that there was no such thing as an orchestra style that was separated from singing. Whenever Bud played a solo, sometimes it would be Bruckner and it would be very simple and very noble. Sometimes it would be French music and it would be quite sophisticated and nuanced. And so the styles of singing has changed from composer to composer, but the life in the sound was always present, even in Mozart. You know, I like to point out that when Bud played classical composers, Beethoven symphonies, or even Mozart piano concertos that are not exciting to most trumpet players, Bud never sounded boring, and he never saw those parts as boring. He always brought a distinction to everything that he played. It was always musically projected, and he would provide rhythmical impetus and energy in a Beethoven symphony. Now, Beethoven's not famous for his trumpet writing, but timpani and trumpets have an important role to play in classical symphonies. And it's important that there is rhythmical incision, that there's clarity in the attack. In many ways, the trumpets and the timpani are the articulation of the orchestra, and they articulate key parts in the symphony. And so while they don't have a major thematic role to play, they have a major energy role to play in that music. So Bud was a very sophisticated musician.
Is he still around? Can we?
He is. He lives in Oak. He came to concerts every week until very recently. He doesn't like to get around at night anymore, so we're not seeing him at concerts. But he lives in Oak Park, where I live, and Jay lives, and I see him regularly. And
would he come in and maybe talk in a duo with you? We could just have a conversation. Would you think he'd come on? That would be fascinating.
It would be great to get him. It'd be great. He has the best stories, I can tell you. He has stories.
Okay, well, you know how it works now, so
yeah.
So
look, this is a great format, and I'm happy to do this anytime. I'm a little bit relieved that it worked, because I'm a technical novice, and the fact that we can be talking to Melbourne tomorrow in the morning and Berlin tonight in this, as the sun's going down in Chicago, and talking to everyone, or to all of our friends, it's fantastic, and I give you a lot of kudos for bringing us all together like this. Yeah, I love doing it, and
it's a pleasure for me, because I'm getting to talk to all my friends. I love it.
It's a great format. It's a great format, and it's pure pleasure for me. I want to say one more thing. You said what makes me a something teacher, and there's an important thing here. I was endowed with the love of music from my parents. My parents played classical music all day, every day. They studied music. My mother was a violinist. My dad was a trombonist. They met at the Conservatorium in Sydney. And so I grew up in a musical household, even though I was impervious to it till about the age of 14, when I suddenly got the bug. And it was that love of music, the love of what music says and how it moves people, that made me play the trombone. I came to the trombone through music, not the other way around. But I came to the trombone relatively late, and I think that I figured out how to play the trombone in order to play the music that was already embedded in me because of my upbringing. But I can honestly say that my love of music is totally undiminished by many years in the profession, even though not every day is a perfect day. I'm very happy to be in the profession, and it's my love of music and what it does for my soul and what it does for my spirit that gives me the energy to share passionately with the young people here at school and the people I see from around the world, to share that gift that was given me. And the things that I tell you, I have learnt from wiser people and more experienced people than myself, and people who had the love of what they were doing and cared enough to share it with me. And I'm very happy. It's the most natural thing in the world for me to share that with other people. In fact, if you're experiencing something great, when you share it with someone, your pleasure's doubled. And so, you know, the worst thing you can be is an isolated person doing great things and in total total isolation of other people. If you're having a great meal, if you're looking at a great scenery, what you want to do is say, look at that, isn't that great? Or taste that, isn't that fantastic? Or was that great for you too? So it's a very natural thing. I think the love of it is actually the answer. You know, I do it because I love it. I really do love it.
I absolutely agree. My heart is bursting here with what you're saying, because it just really speaks from my heart as well. And that's why I'm trying to do what I'm doing in this small way. But having people like you to come on and then speak to everyone out there like that, it's just such a treat. Thank you so much. We have so many other technical questions. I don't want to go into them now. I'll just promise the people at home sitting there that we will be back. I will get Mick back on. I promise, I promise, I promise. We are talking about...
Absolutely.
We're talking about new formats and what we can do online for brass, and any of your suggestions are welcome. So I'm going to leave the technical side for today. I hope you forgive me, but the inspirational side has been huge. It's just been huge. So thank you
we'll do it again.
Times, and we'll do it again. And for everybody else, Dale's colleague, Dale Clevenger, is Mick's colleague, Dale Clevenger, is on tomorrow at 8:30 New York time. He's with Jeff Nelson in Indiana at the moment. So tune in for that. And Mick, vielen Dank, 1,000 thanks for your and we want you back very, very, very soon.
Yeah, I send my love to everyone out there. Thanks for tuning in, and I look forward to the next time. And thanks to Tim and everyone in Melbourne for making it.
Thanks. Bye, guys. See you tomorrow.
Okay. Good night. Good morning. Au revoir.